Today we're going to be checking out several new mouse pads from VAXEE. Huge shout out to VAXEE for sending these out for review. We're going to be checking out their PC mouse pad, their PEK series mouse pads, and their PD mouse pads. Their PEK mouse pad comes in two different colorways. You can either choose between black or pink. And there's two different variants here. You either have the regular PEK, which comes packaged rolled up inside of this square box, or you can choose the PEK GEH, and this one comes flat packaged. The difference between the two is that the GEH has a different base than the regular PEK. Apparently the base on the PEK GEH has a better anti-slip performance. The regular PEK retailed for $50 USD, and then the PEK GEH with that enhanced base is going to cost you an extra $5 coming in at $55 USD. Next we have the VAXEE PD mousepad. Apparently each PD mousepad is handcrafted, which is pretty interesting. So each mousepad might have slight imperfections. The cost here for their PD mousepad is $50 USD. And finally, coming in at the cheapest option is going to be their PC mousepad, which comes in at $29 USD. Starting with the PEK mousepad here, you do have stitched edges going all the way around, as well as the VAXEE logo stitched here on the side, which gives this pad overall a very clean look. This pad is actually pretty stiff. It's not really as flexible as I thought it would be, especially when compared to something like my Artisan Zero. When pressing down on it, there's actually not much plush on this pad, and it actually has a pretty firm surface. The dimensions here of the PEK come in at 510 millimeters by 500 millimeters with a thickness of 3.5 millimeters. VAXEE claims that this pad is moisture resistant, so if you do live in a humid environment, you don't have to worry about that. And the surface of the pad here is a little bit textured, reminds me of my Artisan Zero. In terms of the feel of the surface, it's not a smooth pad. When you run your hand over it, you definitely do feel the texture. So that is something to keep in mind if you're somebody whose forearms get irritated easily. Next up, the VAXEE PD pad comes in at 480 millimeters by 400 millimeters, so slightly smaller than the PEK, but still a very nicely sized mouse pad. I find that the PEK is a little bit too large for me. I definitely prefer the dimensions on the PD. It's just slightly smaller and fits better on my desk. I was actually surprised how heavy the PD is. It weighs around 975 grams, which is absolutely insane. Like when I took this out, I was not expecting this mousepad to be this heavy. The base here on the PD is like this reflective adhesive material. You honestly don't need to worry about any of these pads sliding around on your desk. All of them stick to the table really well. If you've ever used the PA or PB mousepad from VAXEE, the surface of the PD is exactly the same as those, but the base on this is much harder. So as you can see, when putting it on the table here, there is absolutely no plushness on the PD pad. This is really, really firm. Like when I press down on the pad, there's absolutely no give. It's almost as hard as pressing down just on like your table. So in that sense, this mouse pad is really unique just because it's so stiff. It's almost like playing on a hard pad, but obviously the surface is still cloth. So you get that cloth surface while having the base of like a hard pad. This pad is also super thick, coming in at 5.6 millimeters. And the PD also comes flat packaged, which makes sense because this pad is almost impossible to roll up. Like it is not a very flexible pad just because it's so thick and the base is so hard. There are no stitched edges on the PD, but the sides here kind of taper off. So if you are reaching the edge of the mouse pad, you actually don't feel anything. But yeah, no stitching on this pad. It just kind of tapers off into a rounded corner. Last, we have the PC pad, which is the smallest of the bunch, coming in at 460 millimeters by 380 millimeters. This pad again has no stitched edges and it definitely feels like the cheapest of the three, with it being pretty flimsy but also surprisingly the most plush out of the three. And there is a texture on the surface of this pad as well, which you definitely can feel when you're running your hand across it. Moving on to glide speed, I would put the VAXEE PEK and the VAXEE PD around the same glide speed, with the VAXEE PD being maybe slightly slower than the PEK. And I think that's just due to the fact that the PEK has a slightly softer base as well as the fact that it's more textured on the surface, so it ends up feeling a little bit faster in terms of glide than the PD. And then the PC I would put faster than both the PD and PEK. But don't get me wrong, all three of these pads are definitely still considered control pads. I would not say that any of these pads are considered speed pads or even fast control pads. All three of these pads are pretty slow pads. The build quality is super nice on the PEK and the PD. Both of them feel like really solid pads. Even though the PD doesn't have any stitched edges, it still feels very premium. I would say the cheapest feeling pad out of these three is unsurprisingly the PC pad. No stitched edges and it also just feels flimsy as well. But overall, I have no real big complaints about any of these pads. VAXEE has always made really solid peripherals, and these are no different. Overall, I actually found myself enjoying the VAXEE PD the most just because it had a super unique feeling with that super stiff base, but also still having that controlled cloth glide. And I really like the smooth surface as well, whereas the textured surface on the PC and PEK mousepads, I found that those kind of irritated my forearm after extended gaming sessions just because of that textured surface. But yeah guys, overall really solid mousepads from VAXEE. If you are looking for a new mousepad, these are definitely worth looking into. If you are interested in checking them out, I will leave a link to them in the description below. But that's pretty much it guys. I will see you in the next video. Peace.